morning, everyone. Paul Ruppler here with Fox 29 News Now. We're coming to you Monday morning. Thank you very much for watching. This is our newscast that we begin shortly after Good Day every morning. We're running a little bit later than planned this morning. A little bit of technical difficulties, but I wanted to get you to a story that we're following right now. Our Jenny Joyce has been following this all morning. Let's get you. Cell phone video captured the moments leading up to a deadly police-involved shooting near Dorney Park. This is in Lehigh County on Saturday. The woman who recorded the video says the man was unarmed. Jenny Joyce has this report from South Whitehall Township in Lehigh County.
Well, the South Whitehall Township police officer has been placed on administrative leave as state police head this investigation. Detectives are looking into whether or not the officer was justified in opening fire and killing a man on Saturday. In this cell phone video shot by witness Carla Dozier of Mount Airy, you can hear the officer yell, "Get down on the ground," multiple times before the shots are fired. Early on in the video, you can also see the man walk over to the police cruiser with his hands up on the side of the vehicle. People that we talked to say you can see that the man doesn't have a gun in his hand, but police have not confirmed whether or not he was in fact armed. Witnesses think deadly force could have been avoided in this case.
It's an unfortunate situation, but I mean, you know, police officers have a split decision to make a decision, but I think you could have disabled him probably, you know, instead of, you know, someone's life is taken now.
All cops are not bad. They're not bad. I have friends in the police. They're sergeants. They're not bad, but you need to train them a little bit better to pull tasers out, taser. Handling them a little bit better.
Police were initially called to Hamilton Boulevard near Dorney Park for the report of a man messing with traffic and vandalizing vehicles. The woman who shot the cell phone video says she started recording on her phone because the man was acting crazy, but she and others were stunned to see how the attempted arrest played out. The district attorney says a lot of information right now is being withheld because it's so early on in the investigation. Again, the state police is the lead agency handling this case, and autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow. Back to you.
That was Fox 29's Jennifer Joyce reporting. We did just get an update from police about this story I want to give you. They say the man who was shot and killed was Joseph Santos. He's 44 years old, of Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. They say he was pronounced dead Saturday night at Lehigh Valley Hospital. As Jenny mentioned, an autopsy is going to be performed to determine the exact cause of death. This happened on the 3700 block of Hamilton Boulevard, police say. The county coroner's office and state police are conducting an investigation with the assistance of Lehigh County District Attorney Jim Martin and the county's homicide task force. And police say there will be no further comment at this time regarding the investigation. So they did not have comment on whether the man was armed or not there in the news release that we just received Monday morning about this case. There you have the latest on that story. Let's get you out to another story that this was our Dave Kinchin was reporting this morning. Pennsylvania State Police and government officials have blocked access to the sales of 3D downloadable guns in the Commonwealth. Now, this follows an emergency hearing in Philadelphia Federal Court initiated by Attorney General Josh Shapiro. Here's Dave Kinchin with more.
Pennsylvania state officials announcing what they're calling a big win in the effort to curb the use of guns, and not just any guns. We're talking about 3D downloadable guns. The PA State Police and other officials have said that they've blocked 3D downloadable guns from being sold in the Keystone State. It all happened after what was called an emergency hearing here at the Philadelphia Federal Court office, initiated by the state attorney general. As a result, Defense Distributed, the company that sells the files that allow people to make 3D guns, agreed to block Pennsylvania residents from accessing their website. The founder of the Texas-based business is still defiant through all of this controversy.
It's the idea that this represents that's more scary than its physicality. So what? It's a plastic gun. But the idea that one day you'll be able to make things for yourself despite a politician managing your future is very disruptive very violent to these people.
Meantime, Defense Distributed is actually suing New Jersey's Attorney General, who recently issued a cease and desist order against the company. They say that the company's practices violate state laws in New Jersey, so this court action far from over. At the federal courthouse in Center City, Dave Kinchin, Fox 29 News, back to you.
That was Fox 29's Dave Kinchin reporting that story about the 3D downloadable guns. Let's get you a look at our weather today. We are expecting, after a nice start with some comfy temps and comfortable low dew points, clouds will increase later and the humidity does too. There's a chance of a stray shower, according to Sue Serio and the Fox 29 Weather Authority, who was showing this information all morning. You can see there the jet stream bringing moisture up again. So it looks like we're going to have a bit of an unsettled pattern, kind of like we did last week during the middle of the week, for the better part of the week actually, from last weekend into the latter stages of the week. Sue was showing a planner this morning that shows after the comfy start for the morning drive, we're going to have increasing clouds and a shower chance. So around lunchtime, we're going to be around 80 degrees, and then for the PM drive, about 82. Here's another look at what she was showing there. 82. Then tonight, we get down to 69. We'll have some shower storms and muggier tonight with winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Let's get a look at your full 7-day forecast. There's your. Sue was calling this morning an 8, 82 degrees AM sun, then the PM showers. You see lots of lightning bolts there. Showers and storms chances on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and even later on Saturday. It's a sunny and a storm at some point on Saturday. Highs will be in the mid 80s for the most part, getting a little closer to upper 80s by Sunday when it'll be warmer at 89. Overnight lows in the 60s again tomorrow night. Tonight over it looks like. Well, Tuesday looks like a 7 overall. But then the rest of the week, overnight lows in the 70s. Wednesday looks like a 6. Here's another look at, this was Sue showing the conditions earlier this morning. So 69 tonight, but again, that shower thunderstorm chance, muggier overall. Here's another look at your radar there, with that big jet stream pumping moisture into the area. Let's get you back to some stories that we have here that we're following today at Fox 29. Police in Delaware are searching for a man posing as a social worker. Investigators say he attempted to snatch a child on Friday afternoon on Harkins Avenue in Smyrna, Delaware. Police say the man knocked on someone's door claiming he was with Child Protective Services and was there to take their child. The door was slammed in his face and he took off. He was last seen leaving, driving a white Ford sedan. So be on the lookout for that. If you live down that way, again, there was a man posing as a social worker in Smyrna, Delaware. We want to bring you a story that we aired this morning on Good Day Philadelphia. This was about the California wildfires. Sadly, had some dangerous fires, deadly fires. I believe 8 people have been pronounced dead out there. At least 2 of them are firefighters. 8 people confirmed dead in the massive wildfires, including the 2 firefighters. There are around 12,000 firefighters working to control a total of 17 wildfires right now, and tens of thousands of people have been forced from their homes. Dry, windy conditions are making the flames difficult to fight, and crews expect the battle to continue through mid-August. So we're looking at a multi-week battle, it looks like, from the sounds of it. Earlier this morning, Fox News' Lauren Blanchard joined Good Day Philadelphia to provide the latest details.
Is rising as several wildfires they continue to rage throughout the state. 8 people have died, including 2 firefighters, as tens of thousands of people, they are being forced from their homes.
So Fox News' Lauren Blanchard is in Redding, California with more. Lauren, this becomes difficult. 3,300 firefighters, and they're getting injured trying to battle the blaze.
Yeah, good morning, Alex. Lauren, 3,300 battling just the car fire alone. I am in Redding, California. Let me show you a little bit of what it looks like right now. We are in a neighborhood that's nearly been reduced to ashes. There's a car back there, a boat completely burned up, the house completely gone. All around here, a lot of these homes completely destroyed. Now, around California, there are almost 20 fires blazing. It's taken about 12,000 firefighters around the state, plus more fire trucks being brought in from all over the country to try and battle this. The car fire, that's the one here in Shasta County. That one is probably the most severe at this time. It's burned about 95,000 acres so far, about 650 homes destroyed. Firefighters are hoping they'll be able to contain it, but at this point, it's only 17% contained after a week. Alex, Lauren?
And you have to think about, because you keep mentioning the firefighters and the struggle and what they're dealing with, about the fact that 2 firefighters have died. I know we know one of them, Brian Hughes, was one of those firefighters. So for sure, they're thinking about that as they work to handle this.
Right, so extremely sad news out of the Ferguson fire up in Yosemite. That's where we saw that firefighter pass away yesterday. There have also been 2 down here in Redding, California. We've also seen civilian deaths, at least 4 from the car fire. A great-grandmother and her 2 young great-grandchildren killed in the fire, as well as one other person. They have not given us details about who it is, where they exactly were. They just said they were able to recover a body from a home. They haven't said whether that number will go up, but there are people missing.
Oh, that's just so sad to hear. And then just it's evidence behind you, what we see of the damage that it can leave behind. All right. So thank you, Lauren, for this update.
Right.
7:34.
Again, that was a report about the California wildfires from Redding, California. It was followed by Fox News' Lauren Blanchard when she joined Good Day Philadelphia earlier this morning. President Trump is threatening a government shutdown over his demand for a border wall. And as Doug Luzader reports from Washington this morning, that comes with the midterm elections just 99 days away.
Hard to keep up on the president's Twitter account this weekend because the tweets were fast and furious, but there was one in particular that got a lot of attention, and it may lay the groundwork for a big government funding fight this fall. Why do you want a government shutdown? The president was asked as he left a weekend getaway in New Jersey. He didn't answer, but his earlier tweet made his feelings clear. I would be willing to shut down government if the Democrats do not give us the votes for border security, which includes the wall. Must get rid of lottery, catch and release, etc., and finally go to system of immigration based on merit. We need great people coming into our country.
That tweet kind of shocks me.
Axios White House reporter Jonathan Swan says he recently spoke to senior White House officials about this very subject.
They were of the impression that they had convinced the president that it was not in his political interests to shut down the federal government 6 weeks before an election.
A government funding technically runs out on September 30th. The president may see this as a play to enliven his base, returning to a signature issue. But a shutdown is exactly what GOP leaders in Congress are trying to prevent, with concerns that it may anger voters, especially independents, just before the midterms.
I don't think it'd be helpful, so let's try and avoid it.
Yeah, and the other thing, you have to consider the Senate, where Republican leaders are trying to get through the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to be the next Supreme Court justice, and they want to get that wrapped up before the court's new term begins in October, right around the time that a government funding fight would take place, if it happens.
Again, that was Doug Luzader reporting from Washington. The president has been relatively quiet on Twitter this morning, at least one retweet and then one original tweet that says, we must have border security, get rid of chain lottery, catch and release sanctuary cities, go to merit-based immigration, protect ICE and law enforcement, and of course keep building, but much faster, the wall being in all capital letters, something he's been using more of lately. We also want to bring you a report, our morning business outlook, the trade war trickle down, and a movie snafu under the radar. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco has more in today's morning business outlook.
Good morning. Despite the tech wreck of Facebook and Twitter last week, the Dow posted its 4th week of gains. But tech stocks led the NASDAQ lower for the 2nd straight week. Today we'll get earnings from Dow component Caterpillar. Apple and Tesla report later this week. American consumers are starting to see higher prices for some products, including recreational vehicles, soda, and beer, as a result of tariffs on metal and parts. Winnebago, Polaris, and Sam Adams have all said they will raise prices due to tariffs. Many movie subscribers say they were unable to buy tickets to Mission Impossible Fallout this weekend. The all-you-can-watch subscription service first crashed on Thursday after its parent company ran out of cash. The company said it got an emergency $5 million loan, but it appears MoviePass never fully got back up to speed over the weekend. That's business. For more, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm Tracy Carrasco.
Emergency $5 million loans. Good if you can get them. Attorney General Jeff Sessions spoke this morning. He made an announcement this morning on protecting religious freedom at the Justice Department's Religious Liberty Summit. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who you may know from overseeing the special counsel's investigation, is also expected to make remarks. If he does while we're streaming, we'll bring them to you. Let's hear a bit of what the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, had to say this morning.
Thank you, Beth. It's and good to be with all of you. And thank you for your leadership at Legal Policy. We do have a lot of things going on there. I want to thank Acting Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and our Acting Associate Attorney General Jesse Panuccio for their leadership. Jesse, thank you also for your good remarks and thoughtful remarks this morning. Thank you to Dorothy Williams from the Civil Rights Division for sharing your voice with us today. Thank you, Archbishop Kurtz, my good friend Senator Langford, who is really a thoughtful contributor to these important issues in the Senate, as well as our panelists, Acting Assistant Attorney General John Gore, Kerry Kupak, Derek Max, Professor McConnell, Ozma Udin, Shai Dvorsky, Emily Kao, and of course, Jack Phillips. So I want to thank all of you and thank for your courage, insight, and the ability to articulate the values and importance of religious freedom. Let's be frank. A dangerous movement, undetected by many, but real, is now challenging and eroding a great tradition of religious freedom. There can be no doubt. It's no little matter. It must be confronted intellectually and politically and defeated. This past election, and much that has flowed from it, gives us a rare opportunity to arrest these trends and to confront them. Such a reversal will not just be done with electoral victories, however, but by intellectual victories. We've gotten to the point where courts have held that morality cannot be a basis for law, where ministers are fearful to affirm, as they understand it, Holy Writ from the pulpit, and where one group can actively target religious groups by labeling them hate groups. This President and this Department of Justice are determined to protect and advance our magnificent heritage of freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is indeed our first freedom, being the first listed right in the First Amendment. This has been a core American principle from the beginning. It is one of the reasons this country was settled in the first place. The promise of freedom of conscience brought the Pilgrims to Plymouth, the Catholics to Maryland, the Quakers to Pennsylvania, Scott Presbyterians to the Middle Colonies, Roger Williams to Rhode Island. Each of these groups and others knew what it was like to be hated, persecuted, outnumbered, and discriminated against. Each one knew what it was like to have a majority try to force them to deny their natural right to practice the faith they held dear. Our founders gave religious expression a double protection in the First Amendment. Not only do we possess the freedom to exercise our religious beliefs, we also enjoy the freedom of speech. Our founders' understanding of and commitment to religious freedom was truly brilliant. It was historic, really. It arose in large part from the principles delineated in the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom and its effective, brilliant advocates, Madison and Jefferson. These guys were ferocious. This weekend, I was reading Gary Wills's fabulous book, Head and Heart, in which he quotes extensively from Jefferson's Statute for Religious Freedom in Virginia. I commend all of it to you, but one line stood out in particular to me, quote, that Almighty God hath created the mind free and manifested his supreme will that free it shall remain by making it altogether insusceptible of restraint. And he talked about that from a religious point of view. Of course, this is entirely consistent with other quotes of Jefferson, one of which I recall, chiseled in the walls of the Jefferson Memorial, for I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. So this is what they believed. They believed people's religion was between them and God and articulated it that way, and that no state, no temporal power has the power and ability and moral authority to control that thought. They clearly recognized an individual's relationship with God is a natural right. They explicitly said it precedes the existence of the state and is not subject to the state's control. These concepts were placed in our Constitution and laws and formed really a national consensus that has greatly militated against religious hostility and violence that so many places in the world have seen, and has helped us to this day to be one of the world's most diverse religious people. Actually, of the modern nations, one of the most religious, still to this day. There can be no doubt that we are stronger as a nation because of the contribution of religious people. Every day across America, they feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, educate our young people, care for the sick. They do so not because the government tells them to, but because they want to. They do these things because of their faith. I can assure you that people in Washington have no idea the extent to which our religious community is with the American people in times of birth, death, marriage, divorce, and those kind of situations that are so impactful to human beings. And I believe we need to respect that and affirm it wherever possible. So this faith that Americans adhere to has something the state can never provide. This faith provides meaning and purpose and joy in life. But in recent years, the cultural climate in this country and in the West more generally has become less hospitable to people of faith. Many Americans have felt that their freedom to practice their faith has been under attack, and it's easy to see why. We've seen nuns ordered to buy contraceptives. We've seen United States senators ask judicial and executive branch nominees about their dogma, even though the Constitution explicitly prohibits a religious test for public office. We've all seen the ordeal faced so bravely by Jack Phillips. Americans from a wide variety of backgrounds are concerned about what this changing cultural climate means for the future of religious liberty in our country. President Trump heard the concern. I believe this unease among the American people is one reason he was elected. In substance, he said he respected people of faith, and he promised to protect them in the free exercise of that faith. He declared, we would say, Merry Christmas again. And that was a message that went beyond, of course, just any sectarian comment. The Department of Justice is active. We've settled 24 civil cases with 90 plaintiffs regarding the previous administration's wrong application of the contraception mandate to objecting religious employers. Last month, a district court in Colorado issued a permanent injunction in the case involving the Little Sisters of the Poor, a group of nuns who serve the elderly poor. This is a permanent injunction and a major victory for the Little Sisters of the Poor and for religious freedom. The government has no business telling the Little Sisters that they must provide an insurance policy that violates their sincere religious beliefs. And since day one, this administration has been delivering. Soon after taking office, the President directed me, the Department of Justice, to issue explicit legal guidance for all executive agencies on how to apply the religious liberty protections in federal law. Our team embraced that challenge. I got to say, our team was enthusiastic about that challenge. We had some great young people and others too with experience in these matters that went to work. I issued that guidance in October, and it lays out 20 fundamental principles for the executive branch to follow. Those include the principle that free exercise means a right to act or abstain from action. They include the principle that government shouldn't impugn one's motives or beliefs. We don't give up our rights when we go to work, start a business, talk about politics, or interact with the government. We don't give up our rights when we assemble or join together. We have religious freedom as individuals and as groups. In short, we have not only the freedom to worship, but the right to exercise our faith. The Constitution's protections don't end at the parish parking lot, nor can our freedoms be confined to our basements. Under this administration, the federal government is not just reacting to these challenges. We are actively seeking, carefully, thoughtfully, lawfully, to accommodate people of faith. Religious Americans are no longer an afterthought. We will take potential burdens on one's conscience into consideration before we issue regulations or policies. And this Department of Justice is going to court across America to defend the rights of people of faith. First of all, we are aggressively and appropriately enforcing our civil rights laws, our hate crimes laws, and laws protecting churches and faith groups. Since January of 2017, we've obtained 11 indictments and 7 convictions in cases involving arson or other attacks or threats against houses of worship. Our Civil Rights Division has also obtained 12 indictments in other attacks or threats against people because of their religion. And we're not slowing down. 3 weeks ago, we obtained a jury verdict against a man who set a fire to a mosque in Texas and sentenced a man from Missouri for threatening to kill members of a mosque. In addition to protecting the safety of people of faith, we're also protecting them against unjust discrimination. In January, we filed a brief in a Montana court to defend parents who claim that the state barred their children who are attending private schools from a private school scholarship program because they attended a religious private school. We filed a amicus brief on behalf of the Archdiocese in Washington, D.C., which was refused advertising space for having a religious message, including, I guess, joy to the world or Merry Christmas. What could they have said that would have offended people that barred them from being able to run such a message? And, of course, we're proud to file a brief in support of Jack Phillips. We're taking steps to become even more effective. In June, I announced the Place of Worship Initiative. Under this initiative, the Department is holding public events across America and improving training for our federal prosecutors about legal protections for houses of worship. When I was in the Senate, we passed a law called the Religious Land Use and Institutional Persons Act, RLUIPA. That's easier to say than the title. But under RLUIPA, the Department of Justice can file a civil action in court when religious groups are discriminated against in zoning laws. Under my tenure, we have not hesitated to use this tool when appropriate. In June, we filed suit against a town in New Jersey that had refused over and over again for 8 years to let an Orthodox Jewish congregation buy land for a synagogue. And just last week, we filed a brief in federal court supporting the case of a Hindu temple in Maryland that claimed to have suffered discrimination in its attempts to purchase land. We're going to keep going to court, and I believe we're going to keep winning. Today, I am announcing our next step, the Religious Liberty Task Force, to be co-chaired by the Associate Attorney General, Jesse, and the Assistant Attorney General for Office of Legal Policy, Beth. The task force will help the department fully implement our religious liberty guidance by ensuring that all Justice Department components, and we've got a lot of components around the country, are upholding that guidance in the cases they bring and defend, the arguments they make in court, the policies and regulations they adopt, and how we conduct our operations. That includes making sure our employees know their duties to accommodate people of faith. And as the people in this room know, you have to practice what you preach. So we're going to remain in contact with religious groups across America to ensure that their rights are being protected. We have been holding listening sessions and will continue to host them in the coming weeks. This administration is animated by that same American view that has led us for 242 years, that every American has the right to believe and worship and exercise their faith in the public square. This approach has served this country well. We are perhaps the most religiously developed nation in the world and can take pride in respecting all people as they fully exercise their beliefs. It is clear these policies have furthered peace, prosperity, freedom, lawfulness, and charity. As our nation grows older, we must not let it depart from this noble tradition. So, now I have the pleasure of introducing a great American and religious leader, Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, someone who is an expert on these matters. Archbishop Kurtz was ordained a priest of the Diocese of Allentown in 1972. Over the next 2 decades, he served in a variety.
Again, you were watching Attorney General Jeff Sessions speaking at a Religious Liberty Summit that was held by the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. It's being held there. The Attorney General, I believe Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, was expected to speak or make remarks. If we see those come live, we will bring those to you. Also this morning, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke at an event. It was the Indo-Pacific Business Conference. Here we go. It was the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, and Energy Secretary Rick Perry were also speaking there. It was the Indo-Pacific Business Forum, that was the full name, hosted by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We have some of his remarks from this morning. Let's bring those to you also.
For advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific, and why U.S. business engagement is at the center of it. It's a staple of our mission to promote peace, stability, and prosperity. President Trump first outlined his vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific at the APEC CEO Summit in Vietnam just last year. The national security strategy also detailed that vision. Make no mistake, the Indo-Pacific, which stretches from the United States west coast to the west coast of India, is a subject of great importance to American foreign policy. As I will detail in a bit, this region is one of the greatest engines of the future global economy, and it already is today. The American people and the whole world have a stake in the Indo-Pacific's peace and prosperity. It's why the Indo-Pacific must be free and open. And for those of you who might not be familiar with our terminology of free and open, I want to just spend a minute talking about what it is this administration means when it uses that language. When we say free in the Indo-Pacific, it means we all want all nations, every nation, to be able to protect their sovereignty from coercion by other countries. At the national level, free means good governance and the assurance that citizens can enjoy their fundamental rights and liberties. When we say open in the Indo-Pacific, it means we want all nations to enjoy open access to seas and airways. We want the peaceful resolution of territorial and maritime disputes. This is key for international peace and for each country's attainment of its own national aims. Economically, open means fair and reciprocal trade, open investment environments, transparent agreements between nations, and improved connectivity to drive regional ties, because these are the paths for sustainable growth in the region. The U.S. commitment to free and open Indo-Pacific is deeply rooted. The State Department, which I represent, established a consular presence in Kolkata, then called Calcutta, in 1794. American entrepreneurs, whom most of you in this room represent, have been trading and investing in the Indo-Pacific even longer than that. And I won't give you a full history today, but I will note how the United States has played a foundational role in enabling the growth, development, and wealth we see across the entire Indo-Pacific today. The great theme of our engagement is this: where America goes, we seek partnership, not domination. After World War II, we worked with Japan to forge a great alliance and stimulate an economic boom. South Korea in the 50s was ravaged by conflict. American assistance and investment in railways, ports, and other infrastructure helped create a foundation for our South Korean friends to recover, thrive, and build one of the world's most prosperous economies, one that is now strong enough to aid other countries in their development. In the 60s, we grew partnerships to address basic developmental needs. We supported transformational agricultural efforts, such as the Green Revolution, which forever improved farming of wheat and rice worldwide.
We're going to step away from that. Senator Richard Blumenthal is holding an event right now. Let's take you to that. It's about the classifying documents from 9/11. This is the source for this is WTIC. And again, this is Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut.
What would you like us to say?
You are unsung heroes, and we are not only families, we are the 9/11 community.
This is my wife, Lorene. We lost our 23-year-old son.
Hello, good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think you know Brett Eagleson, but before we begin, anyone who would like to say who you are, I would welcome anyone who wants to step forward and identify yourself. I know some of you have been public in this effort, and any of you who would like to say who you are, and then when Brett and I are done, you can come forward again.
We don't have to. Laureen and Matthew Solito, we lost our 23-year-old son at the World Trade Center. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. He was on the 105th floor. He never had a shot. None of them did from Cantor. We believe in the fact that we need declassification of the 9/11 documents. pertaining to what happened that day and the accountability and responsibility that needs to be taken by other foreign countries. Thank you very much for covering this, and we look forward to seeing a positive result from our elected officials. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to step forward?
Hi, I'm Gail Eagleson, and my son, Brett Eagleson. I'm very proud of Brett for taking on the role that he has to try to find the truth about what really happened on 9/11. I lost my husband, Brett's father. He was on the 17th floor in the South Tower. He worked for Westfield Shopping Center. He could have gotten out. Everybody from his company got out. We really don't know why he didn't get out. He was not found. And as time goes by, you think things, get easy. They do get easier, but it's a scar left on you that will never leave. And I have my grandchildren here and my daughter-in-laws, and I try to talk a lot about my husband so that they will have a memory of him, so that they will think that they know him. I'm very thankful to the senator for he's helped us immensely with JASTA, with our struggles, and I just plead to the Senate. I plead that people will please support us to declassify the documents to 9/11. We have a right to know. It's been 17 years, and I'm pleading that we can do this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Jackson, and I was down at the site. I would have been killed when my subway would have gone underneath Tower 1. However, God was with me. I actually call myself a 9/11 warrior. I'm still going through it with a few issues. I would like the commission to please declassify the heavily redacted, which I hear, paperwork, so that all the victims and their families can have peace with everything that has happened. We hear a lot of stories, but we want to hear the truth. Thank you very much.
As you know, normally I would speak first and then ask others to speak after me. But you've just heard from the most important people here today. I'm here as a lawyer and a United States Senator and a former Attorney General, but it's not about me. It's really about these families and the American people. They deserve the truth. Very simply, they deserve the truth, which is essential for their fair day in court, and for the American people to know who was complicit in 9/11. I'm honored to stand with them as they continue this quest for truth and justice, and very simply, a fair day in court. Now, this step today, introducing a resolution in the United States Senate calling on the United States government to declassify and release these documents, is another step in a continuing effort. They've met resistance at every step of the way, but they've persevered. They met resistance from the governments that they sued, the Saudi government, that sought to dismiss their case. We passed specific legislation, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, known as JASTA, Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act. And I was proud to lead that effort along with colleagues who have now joined me in this resolution. It passed overwhelmingly through the United States Congress and it was vetoed by President Obama. We overrode that veto in the United States Senate by a near unanimous vote. This measure is bipartisan. I hope that this government will yield to the moral force as well as political pressure that this resolution embodies. Very simply, there are documents in the possession of the United States government that are still classified. I'll give you some examples of them according to a report from the New York Post of September of 2016. More than 80,000 pages of unreleased documents related to the FBI's investigation of a wealthy, well-connected family in Saudi Arabia. Still classified FBI case files from investigations of the hijackers in Virginia, New Jersey, Arizona, and Oklahoma. Classified material from the 9/11 Commission, including investigators' 2003 interview with Saudi Prince Bandar. An entire section of the Saudis' role in 9/11 that was blanked out from the 2015 report of the 9/11 Review Commission, which was set up to assess the FBI and the CIA's performance. That's a partial list. These documents should be declassified and released. The burden is on the United States government to justify any continuing secrecy of these documents. The time is long past when sources or methods would be in jeopardy. I respect that possibility as a reason. But we're 17 years removed from those sources and methods. And if there's still a need, the United States government ought to be prepared to defend it. Otherwise, all it is doing right now is protecting the Saudis and terrorist organizations rather than protecting these families and the American public. It should be helping them, not hindering them, simply because of potential embarrassment or opposition from the Saudi government. There is a moral issue here. There's also a practical issue. The reason that JASTA was passed was to hold accountable anyone and everyone who was complicit or aided and abetted, sponsored or supported those hijackers who ran those planes into the World Towers and into the Pennsylvania soil and the Pentagon. They killed people. They killed Americans. They killed loved ones of these families and many, many others across the United States. They are advocating for themselves and for those families to hold accountable anybody complicit in those attacks, but they are also advancing our national interests. Holding accountable all of the terrorist organizations, the Saudi government, anyone else complicit will deter future attacks. Only one of the tools we have, and we need every tool available through intelligence and military and so forth to deter these attacks. But holding them accountable in courts is one way to do it. So this effort is really about American justice, American national interests, and the American people. And the kind of support provided to those hijackers made the attack possible, whether it was training or resources or transportation. These families deserve to know what it was. And with that, let me call on Brett Eagleson.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Senator. Thank you to everyone here in attendance. Thank you for covering the report. This is probably, I don't know, half a dozen times or now more that we've done this, where I've stood up here with the senator and we've been in snowstorms, ice storms, 90-degree July heat. We've seen it all. And quite frankly, I love doing these things, but I'm tired of coming up here and asking for help. And it's about time that we get the answers that we deserve. It's been 17 years, and just like the senator had said, that's far too long. 17 years ago, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have social media. The world is a different place today than it was 17 years ago. So you can't give me any credible reasons that the reason that these pages or this information is still redacted is for national security interests. And that's what we're running up against. I can tell you stories of, we had submitted information related to Osama bin Laden from the Department of Justice, and the response was, we need a privacy waiver. Hand to God, their response is they wanted us to get a privacy waiver from Osama bin Laden. They also wanted us to produce death certificates from the hijackers. So it seems to us that the rights of the terrorists and our enemies are coming before the rights of the United States citizens. And I'm standing here with Colton. You might know him. He's been in a few other press conferences, and he asks me all the time, Brett, what happened to Grandpa Bruce? And I like to think I can tell him what happened, but we don't know the real answers because it's been 17 years, and like the senator indicated, there are literally thousands and thousands of documents that are still redacted for no reason whatsoever. And as the senator said, this is a bipartisan effort. We have an identical resolution in the House sponsored by a Republican, Walter Jones from North Carolina. It is the same text of this Senate resolution. So Senator Blumenthal has always been, he's been a stalwart for us. He's been there since the beginning. He was a leader on JASTA. He was a leader on the declassification of the 28 pages, and now he's here with us again for this new effort that we're going to be filing a resolution soon down in D.C. Again, I just can't thank the senator enough and his staff for all the support and all the attention that we're getting today, and all the family members that made it out today. So with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Brett. We're happy to take any questions.
Senator,
George?
you had overwhelming support as you discussed it. Do you believe it's going to be the same type of support here with this Congress going forward?
I hate predictions, but it should have the same kind of overwhelming bipartisan support, and I hope it will be done before this September 11th. I hope that we will have the kind of overwhelming support in both the House and the Senate, and it will be bipartisan, to cross the finish line on this resolution. But most important, whenever it's done, and I hope it will be before the next anniversary, September 11th, the government of the United States has to be more forthcoming and faithful to these families. They have the courage to stand here as they have on other occasions. I hope this government will have the same kind of guts and spine to release these documents.
When you had that last conversation, I guess to Brett or to the families, did you get some of the answers, over the last few years as some of the documents have been released? Are there some answers you haven't been able to get?
Well, thank you. That's actually a great question. So the legislation that we passed was called JASTA, and that just simply allowed us the right to go to court against Saudi Arabia. Now we're in discovery, and we're being stonewalled by the FBI, the DOJ, the Department of Defense. We have requests into them, and this is when we're getting pushback from them. Sorry, not going to comply with your subpoenas. So Congress voted overwhelmingly, 97-1, to allow the families to have a trial, to have a fair trial, but that's not happening because we can't have a fair trial if all the information that we need for the trial is being blocked. So that, again, is the reason for this new resolution.
But let me make 2 points, because it is a good question. A judge in the Southern District of New York recently denied the Saudi government's motion to dismiss because of justice. So that's a great step forward. But as Brett says, to have a fair day in court, you need more than rumors and newspaper articles. You need evidence, documents that can be verified and put in front of a judge or a jury. That's what they're seeking. And as an example of the kind of information they have and could be corroborated by this evidence, let me say that they filed an amended complaint in March of 2017, which said that they have evidence, for example, to suggest that the Saudi embassy in this country sponsored a flight by two of the potential hijackers as a, quote, dry run for the 9/11 attacks. That flight was from Phoenix to Washington, D.C. They tried to get into the cockpit. They were denied entry. The plane had to land. It was a dry run, but paid for by the Saudi embassy. That's just an example. There's a ton of other information about what the Saudis may have done, what they allegedly did to support this effort. And we're not out to embarrass the Saudi government, but these families, as parties in a United States court, should have access to the kind of evidence that any other plaintiffs have when they're seeking justice.
Do the other senators, I mean, I remember I was in Washington at the time covering it, and it was
Yeah.
a big deal when Democrats came out against and had to veto Barack Obama at that point. Does the Congress understand that what's been happening and how this family's been blocked and how they haven't, after making that stance, and still not getting the answers or being able to push this forward?
We're going to educate my colleagues.
Yeah, that's what
We're going to sit with them and reason with them and make sure that they understand that amidst everything else that's happening in Washington, D.C., and it's hard to focus sometimes on what's important, American citizens are seeking justice, and they deserve these documents.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up, and it's almost akin to imagine that your son or your father was murdered, and you go to the police station and they tell you, well, we know, kind of have an idea who did it, and we have all this information, and, you know, why don't you read through what we have? And, you know, you open up the book and you start reading through it, and you get to the part where, and so did it, and then it's just all blacked out. Literally, we could show you examples of 29 pages, 19 pages, where it starts talking about who funded, logistical support, and there's literally 100% redacted. And it's been 17 years, and it's almost, you kind of have to make that comparison because that's how other people can relate to it. It's your own government, the police department, has the information, but they won't give it to you.
So that's been the situation. Sure, here are the documents, but everything's redacted. You can't.
Right, exactly.
And, you know, George, you're right to point out it was a big deal to stand up to President Obama and say, with all due respect, Mr. President, you're wrong. But we did. And I hope that my Republican friends will do the same here if this government resists turning over those documents. And we will educate them and make them aware that passing JASTA was a good step, but not the end of this battle. Other questions? Well, I really, most important, want to thank the families who have come here today. I know that the trip and being here were not easy to do, but your being here is just tremendously important. Thank you very, very much. We're going to keep fighting. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
You shared an office with my Uncle Clark.
Oh.
We've met that way.
That's what I thought we had met. Yeah. Thank you.
You've been watching Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut hold an event where he is discussing a resolution he's introducing that would call for declassification of more 9/11 documents. He was joined there with by families of some of the 9/11 terror attack victims, some of whom spoke at the microphone, introduced themselves. One gentleman in particular who discussed the difficulty they've had in getting some of the information they want and feel they deserve from the from the government in the aftermath of those attacks 17 years ago almost in September. And they're hopeful that they can get those documents released before the next anniversary comes up of the terror attacks. We have another live event we're going to take you to. This is, I believe that's Senator Chuck Grassley speaking right now at a National Whistleblower Day event. What's interesting about this is that Linda Tripp is expected to speak here, and they're saying that that is one of her first public comments. Let me see if I have that information. It is supposed to be her first public address since 2000. You'll remember her from the Clinton scandal with Monica Lewinsky, and that's Linda Tripp. She is expected to speak at this event. Again, it's a National Whistleblower Day celebration, and this is Senator Chuck Grassley, speaking right now. I believe there's also going to be speakers from the Department of Justice, Inspector General Michael Horowitz, and Second Chance Body Armor whistleblower named Dr. Aaron Westrick. And this day is to commemorate the profound impact whistleblowers have on justice in the U.S. and the critical role lawmakers have in protecting them. Let's take you there now, live.
But you're very proud of being an American. You just want government to do what government's supposed to be doing and spending the money the way the government wants it to work. So I'm going to say thank you. I had two more sentences, but I'm going to pass them on. Hey, I'm taking some of your papers with me here. Yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
That man is a hero. He stared down, in my case, the FBI. What can you say? That takes courage. Welcome to the 240th anniversary of Whistleblower Day. The first U.S. whistleblower law was passed on July 30th, 1778. My name is Jane Turner, and I am an FBI whistleblower. And in the last 240 years, I cannot say we've come a long way, baby. In 240 years, the laws have changed, but not much has changed for the whistleblower. I'm going to mention here, my daughter and I came in from Minnesota, and throughout this few hours today, I'm going to point out some people who have come a lot longer distance. Ioannis Kasoulas, he is from, would you stand up please? He is the president of the Hellenic Anti-Corruption Organization. He flew in from Greece on his own time and money. Kelly McCauley.
I want to take you to another event that's happening, actually. This is, I believe, the first lawsuit being filed in the case of the duck boat fatalities that occurred in Missouri a couple weeks back. This is a news conference that's being held about that. Let's take you there now live.
I want to talk about duck boats because I think it's important that the public knows. And I think before any parent ever thinks about taking a child on a duck boat for what they think is 30 or 60 minutes of fun, that they know the real statistics and the real risks that they face. Duck boats were invented in World War II to bring troops off of the sea onto the land, where they would mostly be abandoned. They had no canopies. They were open air. They began becoming popular, used for commercial tourism in the 80s and 90s. In 1999, the Miss Majestic sank in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It killed and drowned 13, including 3 children. After a 3-year investigation, the National Transportation Safety Board determined that many of those that were killed had been trapped inside the duck boat because of the canopies that they added. What they found was those who had put on life preservers, the buoyancy of their life preserver brought them up into the top of the canopy where they couldn't get out. But if you don't have a life preserver and you could somehow fight your way through the dark out the window, then you don't have the buoyancy that's going to bring you to the surface and save your life. So because of the canopies that they added, you are dead if you do, you are dead if you don't, you're drowned if you do, you're drowned if you don't. They put their passengers in an impossible situation where no matter what they do, they are likely to die if that duck boat sinks. The National Transportation Safety Board said, remove your canopies. But the National Transportation Safety Board doesn't have the force of law. They could only make recommendations. And the duck boat industry did nothing except continue to sell tickets and expose their passengers to harm and death. The National Transportation Safety Board also said, these sink fast. They're gunnels, spelled gun whales, but gunnels are low to the water. They're easily swamped. Their bilges can't take that much water, so make them more buoyant. And the duck boat industry did nothing except sell more tickets to paying customers and to continue to expose them to harm and death. It is now July of 2010 in my hometown of Philadelphia on the Delaware River. A duck boat is hit by a barge which presses it underwater. Those 2 young Hungarian students who came to see America and the ideals for which it stands got trapped inside the duck boat and spent their last living moments gasping for air in the darkness and dying in a cold, dark river. We handled that case. There's an 1851 law called the Limitation of Liability Act. It says that if you want to sue a ship owner, you have to prove that the boat was unseaworthy or that their negligence took place before it went on the water. It was an act passed 160 years ago to protect ship owners before the advent of modern telecommunications, when captains were making decisions half a world away. We beat that limitation of liability action, and that case settled for $17 million. So since 2002, at the latest, the duck boat industry has known that canopies entrap people inside the duck boat if it sinks, and their odds of surviving aren't good. but they never did anything to take them off. Not that technologically difficult. First car I ever drove was a '67 Mustang convertible, and that had a convertible top that went down. They had the technology to either remove it completely or to be able to have it move up and down with the press of a button. But they never did anything. And they exposed their paying customers under the guise that this is a fun, safe, tourist-friendly operation. What we know it is that it is nothing but. Since 1999, there have been 42 deaths associated with duck boats, laid out on this chart here. The death per mile per duck boat rates, the death per mile, death per duck boat rates are staggering. It is estimated that there's somewhere between 100 and 200 operating duck boats in the United States. If we give them 200, that would be one death every 5 duck boats in 20 years. Let's put that into, that's 20%. Let's put that into a statistic we all might understand. There are 300 million cars in the United States. If they had the same death per vehicle rate as duck boats, that would be 60 million people. 60 million people would have been killed in the last 20 years if cars were as dangerous as duck boats. That would be 1/6 the population of the United States. So look around this room. That means 2 people here would have been killed under the same death rates. In December of 2017, Ripley's entertainment conglomerate bought the Branson Ride the Ducks operation from Ride the Ducks International, which was owned by Hershen Entertainment. The duck boat that went out that day, we believe, based upon what we know, would have been designed and manufactured by Ride the Ducks International. And they have also been named in this lawsuit because the manufacturer of that duck boat manufactured a dangerous, defective, and deadly death trap. Ripley's took over the operation. From what we understand, many of the people who had worked there before and were trained before, including the captain, came straight over from Ride the Ducks and would have received their training from them. It is now July 19th. A thunderstorm warning is issued that morning and is upgraded to a thunderstorm watch before the boat takes the water. I may have confused those 2 terms, but it went from bad to worse. We know from earlier litigation that Ride the Ducks policy is that you do not go out on the water if severe weather is approaching. Not there, is approaching. They knew it was approaching. They had been warned it was approaching. And then in maybe the most shocking evidence we have heard so far, they're supposed to go out on the land portion first and then into the water. But they flip it. As you saw from the NTSB release on Friday, they reviewed the videotape, and somebody comes to the back of the duck boat, and there is a conversation about putting the water portion first. It is clear that they knew severe weather was coming, and they tried to beat the storm by going on water first, rather than refunding the $40 that each of these people paid, putting their lives at risk and lives that they would ultimately lose on a decision that those victims never had a chance to participate in. I have heard the excuse that this was a unexpected, sudden weather emergency. No, it wasn't. It was a predicted thunderstorm, and any mariner who was out on the water has to know that severe weather can approach at any time from anywhere. And that's why when you go out on that water, that vessel has to be safe in all conditions. And this was not. Duck boats are sinking coffins. Once they take on water, they sink, and they sink fast. The canopy itself prevents people with normal flotation. Your body itself is going to float up even without, at least a little bit, without a life preserver. According to people who were on board, who we spoke to, and according to the NTSB review of the tapes, passengers were told, don't worry about putting on the life preservers when they first hit the water, even though they knew a storm was coming. And then, as the storm began to rise up, just as it was predicted, they lowered the plastic curtains and closed the lid on the coffin. Now, if it sank, with tons of seawater pouring in from the sides, in the dark, without a life preserver, even to hold on if somehow you could get out that window, you are now trapped. And drowning is a horrible way to die, because there are two competing things going on inside your brain. The higher part of your brain is saying, you can't breathe, you're underwater, you can't breathe, you can't take a breath. If you take a breath, you're drowned. But the more instinctive part of our bodies, in the lower part of the brain, is sending the message, breathe, 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 breathe. And you're underwater, and ultimately, that instinctive urge wins out. And you breathe in seawater. And you know you are drowning in the dark, and you will never see your loved ones again. And it is a horrific, unimaginable way to die. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those families. So we filed this complaint, lay out these facts, because this family doesn't want another family to go through the horror, despair, heartache that they have. And so we have brought this to bring it to light. We hope that anybody who would think to go on a duck boat would think twice and not get on, because of this family's courage to step forward and say, we'll lead the fight. We want duck boats banned. I know that Branson is a town founded on tourism, whose economy is dependent on tourism. And I have been asked, you have said that duck boats should be banned. What about the effect on tourism? Well, the Branson duck boats are owned by Ripley's. And believe it or not, you don't promote tourism by killing tourists. I'll now turn this over to my partner, Drew.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Duffy.
Hello again, Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. We're going to break away and sign off for the day. If there's something else big that's breaking, we'll bring it to you, but we're going to step away from this news conference. Thank you very much for watching. Fox 29 News Now airs after Good Day Philadelphia from about 10 o'clock till 11 or so. We'll stream some events for you, whatever's live. We'll bring you some news from the morning. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.